Trump says that the release of the Democratic memo simply confirms that the Russian dossier that was phony was the basis on getting the FISA warrant. The ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, says just the opposite, says that the dossier was not that important, and we did reveal that it might be a political document. We're going to be talking about that later on. But first, we're talking about the allegation made on CNN and other places that there were not just one deputy, but 4 deputies that refused to go in as the shooting took place. Here's what one Parkland student said about this.
She texted me saying, "There's a shooter in the room. I love you." So, I freaked out. I dropped everything in my hands.
When senior Brandon Huff got word from his girlfriend there was a shooter in the freshman building, he rushed in that direction. He heard the gunshots, and he saw school resource officer Scott Peterson.
The school resource officer was behind a stairwell wall, just standing there. And he had his gun drawn, and he was just pointing it at the building. And shots started going off inside. You could hear them going off over and over again.
Brandon says Coach Aaron Feist risked his life and ran inside to help. But he says Officer Peterson didn't move.
He was pointing his gun at nothing. He was pointing his gun at just a building with kids in it. And he was just talking on the radio, and he never did anything for 4 minutes.
This is the freshman building where Nicholas Cruz went on his shooting rampage. Brandon says Officer Peterson was behind a stairwell in this adjacent building during the shooting. Here's another angle. This is the stairwell where Officer Peterson remained, never going inside to try and stop the shooter.
He's the only one with a gun. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and he has all that while school security guards, coaches pretty much, were running in, shielding kids. Coach Feist, Hickson were running in, shielding kids from bullets and losing their lives while he did nothing.
We tried talking to Officer Peterson at his Boynton Beach home, but were turned away by Palm Beach County deputies who were guarding his house. If Brandon could say something to Peterson, this is what he would want to tell him.
You're despicable. You didn't do your job. You were trained for this. You were armed. You had a bulletproof vest. You were protected more than anybody else who died, who lost their lives, and you did nothing. You froze. You got scared. You did nothing at all. And you could have saved a lot of lives.
And according to CNN, when the Coral Springs police officers arrived there, many officers did not enter the building. There were 3 other Broward County Sheriff deputies also outside the school, did not enter. Orlando Police Chief said this about the failure of the authorities to do what they were trained to do.
Well, it's definitely a failure of all the systems involved. At the Orlando Police Department, I know many other law enforcement agencies in Central Florida and across the nation, there are protocols in place for when we receive social media threats, for when we get some of these red flags. And I would tell you that, we don't stop working until that threat is mitigated, until we get, identify the person who made the threat, go talk to them, talk to their parents, and go really hands-on with them. And in many cases, either arrest or commit that person for an involuntary mental examination. The issue and some of the problems with that is even if we commit someone under the Baker Act for a mental evaluation, they can, get their evaluation and probably be released in less than 72 hours and still go and able to buy a firearm. So that loophole needs to be closed because many of our law enforcement throughout the country have had many success stories as far as mitigating some of these threats and seeing the red flags and working it till the very end, putting the person in custody or getting them evaluated, and then that person still being able to purchase a firearm.
Isn't it interesting? We're being told how articulate these teenagers are, how powerful they are, how persuasive they are. These are the very same teens that you believe are too irresponsible to have a firearm. So we're supposed to be listening to the people that you think is too irresponsible to have a firearm. Discuss firearms. Huh? Sheriff Israel says he was demoralized by the malfeasance of Officer Peterson.
Sheriff, how do you respond to the student?
All what the students said, our video and audio and all the witness statements we have taken corroborates that. That's what I saw. And when I saw that, I was disgusted. I was just demoralized with the performance of former Deputy Peterson, and that's why I called him in and suspended him without pay as we were going to move towards termination, and he resigned.
Here's what another student said about it.
It's absolutely disgusting. He knew his job. He knew what he had to do. And that's another problem. There needs to be accountability. And right now, there is none. Like what's happening with the FBI that failed to give Nicholas Cruz the proper detainment he needed when they found out. And for BSO to not go inside when the shooter was active and they stood outside waiting for other people, it's despicable. It should never happen. And there needs to be accountability. And in the future, they also need to be looking into who they place at these schools, because they can do the same thing and they can just not do anything. They get too comfortable with doing nothing.
Regarding keeping firearms out of the hands of, quote, crazy people, close quote, easier said than done. Again, it was organizations like the ACLU that led the charge in the 70s against what's called involuntary commitment. And the argument was, unless people that are deemed to be mentally ill or of danger to themselves or to others, we have no legal and moral right to involuntarily commit them. So you tell me how you're going to do this. People on the left want to make sure that people like Nicolas Cage do not have firearms. Was he determined by a court to be of danger to himself or to others? Apparently not. Therefore, he did not meet the standard. So you have people on the left, like the ACLU, arguing that taking away firearms from people like that would violate their civil rights. And then you have people on the left saying that the authorities ought to take away weapons from people like that, even though they haven't been determined to be of danger to themselves or to others. So you tell me. Israel says only one deputy was remiss in his duties.
I understand that they're going to give statements to us regarding the other 3, 4, 5 deputies. At this point, we have no reason to believe that anyone acted incorrectly or correctly. That's what an investigation is. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own set of facts. We do know, Jake, that Deputy Peterson at the time uttered, he disseminated information over the police radio. We don't know why what those deputies heard. Perhaps they did something by what they heard from Peterson, and that will be, outlined in interviews. We'll get to the truth. But at this point, one deputy was remiss, dereliction of duty, and he's now no longer with this agency.
Yeah, you're saying
Peterson.
Larry Elder.